if there's one thing I could give a business owner advice is that as you become an entrepreneur, you have to look at your business as no longer being the technician. If you're truly an entrepreneur, right, and if you're truly going to be building a business, your entire time you're building relationships.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Real Pasadena Podcast. This show is dedicated to sharing the experiences of local business owners and inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs here in Pasadena, Maryland, and beyond. My guest on this episode is Alexander Fakeri, owner and CEO of Mojo Creative Digital. Alex is a service-disabled veteran and local Pasadena resident. After leaving the Navy earlier than expected due to injury, Alex found himself working in the world of tech. With the support of family members, he took the leap into entrepreneurship and has been running Mojo for almost 20 years now. In our interview, Alex shared his insights on building his business, including strategic partnerships, raising capital, scaling with systems, and most importantly, building relationships. This episode is sponsored by Buxton Media Productions, your one-stop shop for video production, podcasting, and editing services. Whether you're looking to produce a promotional video for your business, create more consistency with your social media content, or even start your own podcast, Buxton Media Productions has everything you need to get started. They even have a local studio right here in Pasadena where we're recording this podcast. To learn more, visit them online at buxtonmediaproductions.com.
Let's start from the very beginning. One of the things I'm curious is, how did you choose to enter the world of running and operating your own business, call it an entrepreneur, what have you? You chose a path that I feel is less traveled as opposed to, just getting a job. So how did you find yourself in the world of business?
I had a lot of family members that are entrepreneurs, and they some of them were really successful and some weren't. And at the end of the day, I always knew that was a possibility. However, at one point in my career, I had worked for some big companies, .coms, and I found that I personally was seeing my future kind of really dictated by others. And it's okay if you're in alignment with those other visions, right? But when you're not in alignment with those visions, it kind of makes you say, well, can I do this? So I did what a million other people probably started up their business said, well, I'm a technician, I'm a craftsman at what I do. I could do it better than them, right? And so I thought I go do my job and I can go do it. And so that was my initial motivation. But I will say this as a small story. I decided to do this in 2002 when the .com era was coming to an end. And so it was kind of also forced into it, and it just accelerated the decision process. But I had gone on unemployment I was unemployed for about 6 months. And no matter what I did, how hard I worked or what I had to say, wasn't going to change anything back then. So it kind of came for me as like, well, you either put up or shut up. And, if you think you can do that great of a job, then go ahead and do it.
What were some of those companies that you were working at? Because obviously you're in the tech space.
Right.
Was that always kind of a passion for you, or did you just find yourself getting a job in tech and then ultimately that led to where you're at now?
No, I've always artistic. So I was always drawing or painting. I remember I had gotten out of the military after serving and I was injured overseas, and then I kind of ended my military career. Well, I didn't plan on being there forever. It was one of those things where I said, well, let's give it a shot. And when it ended, I was like, okay, what next? And so I remember going to lunch very specifically with an old friend of mine. We served together, and he said, well, I'm going into finance. And my other friend that was there was like, I'm going into nursing. And what are you doing? And I'm like, well, crap, I don't know. What am I doing? But I always liked art, but we knew, then we didn't know squat. And we thought art's not really going to pay anything. It's not going to give you a career. But I did like computers. So I did try to get a job. Well, I took internships building bare bones computers with my hands, cutting my hands on cases. And I realized I didn't like the technology side as much. I did some Y2K conversion technology. I hated that. But what I always kept going back to in my part-time was really design. And then I took this HTML course. This was back in 97, something like that. And I remember liking that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go back and give that a shot. The very first website I made was for a local business. It was Mallory Carpet Care. Oh gosh, seriously, this was back in 2000. It was very early on. But that was kind of the first time I did it, and I'm like, okay, I can do this.
HTML.
HTML, hard
hand.
HTML. Yeah. It was ugly.
That's how things were then.
Yeah, I thought I was the man because I could make a button glow. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Make an animated GIF
Yeah.
on there. Everything's dancing, colorful, and that's funny. Fast forward a little bit. When you were doing that, was that Mojo at the time? Like, how did Mojo come to play?
Yeah, no, that's another great question. Mojo wasn't in existence yet, and I was building websites here and there on the side, and occasionally computers and cooking, whatever he asked me to do, I'd pretty much do because I needed a dollar. At some point, I started building websites often enough where somebody referred me out, and they said, "Here, go talk to this guy. He's looking to build a website," and he was a real estate agent, and so we ended up talking, and next thing you know, we said, well, let's partner up, and we built websites for real estate agents. That went on for a few years, but none of us had the foresight to really say, hey, guess what? 2008, we're going to have a recession. 2009, we're going to have a recession. So, but at that point in 2004, when we built it, it was all real estate. That's what we had done. And we said, okay, we're going to build great websites for real estate agents when leads on the internet were all just a concept. Like nobody knew what they were going to do. At that point, after a year of goofing around, we're trying to figure it out, we finally said, okay, let's call the company Mojo. Actually, even that's kind of funny because my partner at the time said, what do you want to name the company? And I said, well, I'll come up with some names. I came back the next day and come to find out, he says, we're going to call it Mojo. I'm like, what? It's like, what does that stand for? What are you, Austin Powers fanatic? He goes, no, it stands for Management, Organization, and Joint Operations. I'm like, no, it's not. So I said, but we made Mojo work.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah, that was something. So, but it doesn't stand for that. But there's some validity to it nowadays, almost 20 years later. But no, it's about the essence of bringing something special to people, and that's what we stuck Mojo for. So
you mentioned your partner, and one of the things I wanted to touch on was when you recognize a need to get help, right? Because I find that's something that can be difficult too as an entrepreneur, starting a business. A lot of times you're by yourself, right? And it can get kind of lonely. You hear like the solopreneurs and whatnot. You obviously had a partner. You said we. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, you got some help. You had a partner. What did that? How did that form?
The partnership, at first, when somebody brings up a partnership, you have to be a certain type of personality. You are either a lone wolf or you say, I know I can't do it on my own and I need help. And neither one of them is bad. You got to pick what's right for you. But for me at the time, I knew I wanted to make my way in a marketplace that I didn't know anything about. And if I was going to do it, I knew I couldn't do it alone. And so when you look at funding issues, you look at, okay, how are we going to make this work? And somebody that you ideally have something in common with says, yeah, I can do this. And then you entertain it. And that's what we did. Ironically enough, we had a couple other partners and we were a group. But at some point that came to an end too. And it wasn't necessarily bad. It just, everybody evolved. And so eventually they were bought out. But fast forward even a few more years later, I went and took on another partner. But it was because the synergy was there, right? There was something there that not only they complemented my personality, but the services we offered, and together, through thick and thin, it was unstoppable. And from that side, I'm like, okay, this is really great. Like I know my worst and my best, just like a marriage. This person knows the ugly, right? And that's what you're looking for, right? You need somebody that you can work with that knows the ugly, and it's okay.
Now, would you say you were wise enough at the time to kind of intentionally find somebody, say, who had complementary or skill sets that you mentioned, like I needed, if you needed money, right? Well, let me find someone with money. Or did you just find somebody who was like, I'll do this with you, and then you kind of figured out what your strengths and weaknesses were?
I would say it was the latter. Nobody was there telling me. Nobody ever is there for you, telling you exactly what it is. Otherwise, they're asking for your credit card. And then you still won't even listen. But no, I didn't know the answers then. I can say, looking back, that's what I was doing because it makes sense. But truly, you usually at that point, you're hungry, right? No matter what your age is, you're at a point where you desire change. The pain point's so great in your life, you're like, I need to make a change. And so you find somebody who's willing to listen to that conversation. And you leap before you ask questions typically. But so the answer to your question, I probably wasn't as smooth and as strategic as I am now learning so many lessons. But it's a process.
There's a lot more information now. We got podcasts these days you can listen to.
There you go.
And hopefully that's part of the goal with this. Let's talk about some of the challenges you faced. We can start with the growing pains of finding good people, or what other challenges that you've had to face to overcome when running a business?
Well, the big thing is there's a book you should read. It's an old book. I think I've even shared it with you. And the truth is, it's one of those moments in your life where you've heard people give you advice before, right? Look before you leap. Take a deep breath before you react. Like all these little tidbits in life, some you listen to, most you don't. And but this book, E-Myth, was one that I did read, and it was a great book. It's an old book now, but
I've read the E-Myth Revisited.
Yes,
is that a different?
It is, but it's better to read. The Revisited is better to read. It's a short read, but it is that story about a technician that turns into an entrepreneur and then says, "Oh, I can do this," and you burn out good people. You do all the wrong things, and they try to enlighten you and help you look at different things. And it's a great read. E-Myth Revisited, I definitely, even though, again, it's got a little dust on it, it's worth
it's a great book. When you mentioned the technician when we started, I was like, oh, E-Myth.
Yeah, the E-Myth, there you go.
Yep. You go from baking the pies and loving the process of making them, and then now you've got to scale a business, and your priorities, your focus change. How did that work for you? Because that's something I grapple with a lot like, how big do I want to get? And like, as my role changes, is that really something I want? Is that something I'm going to enjoy? How do you deal with that?
It kind of goes back to your other question as well. What were the challenges, right? And I think it's an awareness. If there's one thing I could give a business owner advice is that as you become an entrepreneur, you have to look at your business as no longer being the technician. If you're truly an entrepreneur, right, and if you're truly going to be building a business, your entire time you're building relationships. That's everything. People. I don't want to sound like Mark Leonis from TV, but the truth is it's people. Yeah. And I find my time nowadays, and I do enjoy my people, but my people I take care of are my customers. It's my people and staff. It's myself, my family. That has to come number one. And that was something I wasn't prepared for. And while I generally am a people person, realizing it was going to be part of my job duties was nothing I expected. And so that was a learning curve. And the other thing is just really understanding that you're going to need to be very proactive in planning for the worst case scenario. Two big hurdles in my life in my career, I should say, there might be more than two, but the big notable ones were the recession of 08, 09, the first real recession I dealt with. And you learn a ton of lessons, man. Cash flow, you learn about all the things that matter. You think I'm not going to borrow any money. I don't need any money. That's not smart. You can do it, but good luck. If I could rewind, I would have took a cash infusion a long time ago because I could do so much more instead of slow growing it over such a long period of time. And then you fast forward to the biological recession. Having gone through one was helped me prepare for the other. So I was able to survive it. It just, sure, the COVID money helped, the business relief helped, but that's not all it was about. There was a lot more that required, working with your people. So I would say the financial up and downs are a big hurdle, and you're always going to have them. You could be 20 years in, like me, I'm almost 20 years into this business. I've seen tough months recently, and then I see great years. Like it goes up and down, and you insulate yourself when you start to be better with money. So be wise, know your numbers, be good with money. You don't have to be an expert, but make educated decisions and focus on people. Those are the big things that I didn't expect and have been obstacles throughout the entire process because there's a lot of unknowns.
So you mentioned people, and I wanted to come to this because we had a conversation at lunch a couple weeks ago, we talked about sales. For those people listening or watching, I used to work with you at Mojo.
5.5 years.
Yeah, for 5.5 years. And it's ironic you're the first guest now on the podcast.
As it should be.
Not to say that you pushed me into entrepreneurism and to go out on my own.
Yeah, that could have taken a lot of different... people are going to interpret that in many ways.
But it was around when I turned 30, and it just happened to be when I was working with you that I started to, in my role, I felt somewhat unfulfilled, like things weren't clicking or I wasn't progressing. Right. I wanted things, and I think this was actually before I got to Mojo, but I started down this path of self-discovery, personal development. I started reading books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh yeah, remember we used to read all those books? Yeah.
Yeah, and so it really opened my eyes to these other options, other opportunities, which is, again, part of the reason why I'm doing the podcast, because I went through the public school system and I really felt they were just trying to fit me into a box and just get in line and do what everyone else is doing, which didn't resonate with me, but there wasn't a personal touch to say, like, you know, James isn't like just a rebellious bad kid. He just needs to focus his energy on something else. So I have this grudge because it took me till I was 30 to realize that, and feel like I'm behind with you know, the youth today that has all this information on the internet readly available.
Well, let me interrupt and say one thing, and this is for all entrepreneurs, okay, and anybody in life, whether you're a business owner or not. My mother told me this bit of advice, and I don't know where she got it from, but it was really fascinating, and it really put things in check for me. Just because you're late to the party doesn't mean you're not at the party, you know, and you can't get hung up on how long it took you to get there. Some people got the lucky horse show thrown down their throat, and some have to make it out of lead.
Yeah, it always reminds me of, I think it was it Colonel Sanders KFC? I think he was 65 or something when he started it, so it's like, you know, you're never too late, but...
What's up, Pasadena? I'm James Bowerman, your Pasadena Realtor and host of the Real Pasadena Podcast. As a lifelong resident, I've experienced firsthand what makes our town such an amazing place to live, work, and play. As a local real estate agent, having the opportunity to serve so many wonderful people in our community is truly a great honor. If you're thinking about making a move, let me show you how my knowledge and experience can help you achieve your real estate goals. To learn more or to schedule a private consultation, please visit realcreativegroup.com.
Getting back to like the sales question and people, because I don't remember the specifics, so maybe this will jog a memory when we were talking about you've kind of had a recent revolution or with your process to sales and people. Yeah. Can you talk to that at all?
Yeah. You know, I want to say there's a lot of means to communicate and sell and networking events and tools and widgets out there. Everybody has some sort of solution. And I'm not saying I know it all, but what I am saying is I'm offering you my 28 years of being a professional, my 20 years almost of selling for myself, and having a sales team and going through all those processes and building them up. No matter how many trade shows you go to, how many pay-per-click banner ads you put up there, how many postcards you send out, at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to convert is trust. Because our job, and this is what I tell my salespeople and the clients we work with, your job right now is to accelerate the trust process. You want to do it naturally, right? You're not trying to sell a bunch of smoke and mirrors. But unless you have trust, there's no sale. And if you think about every interaction, anytime you finally swipe that credit card, it came down to a point where I feel good. You don't say the word trust, but it's trust. And
it's so true.
That's where you have to. And where do you get trust? From a relationship, right? You know, if I was to sell you and I said, "Hey, James, I'm gonna build you, do a great logo for you. No, you're really talented yourself. But let's just say you weren't, right? You didn't have that skill set. I would at least be a consideration, right? I'm not saying you definitely pick me, but I would be a consideration, right? I'm going to build you a great website. I can do this for you. I can do that for you. You have a relationship with me, and so it would be an easier decision for you. And so that's the hurdle, right? So who do we go focus building relationships on? And we have to do that for ourselves. We have to do it for our customers, right? You want to be friends with your customers. You really do. And you also want to make them look like heroes. And that's your goal. So anyway, that's my take on it.
No, it's great. I mean, I did not get into being my own boss to do sales. Like,
right.
We had a good relationship because you were the outgoing people person, business development, and I sat in my office with the lights off and my headphones on, just
hammering away
out designs and stuff.
Well, and systems, right? And that's another thing I had to adapt to. Like, and what you're saying is you've adapted, right? That's what you're saying.
I've had to adapt because now I sales is people. And I've learned that the hard way of well, if I don't want to deal with people, then I'm not going to have anybody that wants to work with me. It's literally the focus is simple of having conversations, setting appointments, and like you said, building that trust.
Yeah. And if I can add, again, I bought, like last year I spent, and this is not a boast, this is showing you don't do what I did. Like I spent $16,000 on software to give me access to people instantly, right? And guess what? I was in a room of people I didn't know, basically. Hey, I got your phone number. Great. Okay, freak, go away. Like, what are you doing calling me? And it was 16 grand, but
Yeah.
it was a mistake, and it was a lesson I learned. And I'm not going to get hung up on it. I'm not going to quit. I'm just moving on. Like, I'm okay, ride it out, leverage it for what I can, and move on.
Yeah.
But there's so many tools and widgets businesses get inundated with. My God.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we've all wasted so much money on, the silver bullet, especially in the age of technology, where why do the physical hard work of
Right.
like going and meeting with somebody when I can just spend money on this piece of tech. It's going to promise me all these great things, but
and that's a lesson you had
trap.
to learn. Yeah, it's a lesson you had to learn.
Yeah.
I had to learn. I mean, I'm still
even
learning
coming
lessons.
from that space, because I was, doing websites, and I thought, well,
Correct.
when I first got into real estate, I was like, my head was this big because I'm going to use all my design skills and knowledge. I'm going to create this website and do all this stuff. And nobody came. And it's like, shoot. So I found myself knocking on doors because you said I had motivation.
Yeah,
it's like,
you
I
did.
got to find a way to make this work. So I guess
You
I'm going to go knock on doors and call people and get in front of people.
It's
And it was a stressful time, but
Sure.
it was so worth it to push through all that. So any other challenges or advice you would give to somebody who's, just getting started? I'm going to talk specifically, I think, to, somebody who's in high school and they're figuring out the question of whether they're being asked by the guidance counselor or their friends after they're in the Army, what are you going to do with your life, essentially, that you were faced with, too. It's like, well, I don't know if this path is the right one for me, but, maybe I'll start a business. What advice would you give to somebody like that?
I would say there's two bits of advice, and I hate to say all roles around relationships, but the first thing is you have to find people. They don't have to be partners. They could be mentors. They can be colleagues. They can, like our relationship here, right? You need to find people around you that, whether you employ them or they work for you, that you can have a sounding board. Right, and you don't want to fill the room, your room, if you will, a bunch of yes people, and you don't want a bunch of no people. But you need objective people, and either you find contrary relationship, personalities, you bring them all in the same room, or you find people who are super objective and they can give you positive and negative feedback, and you have to listen. One of the greatest things that I would say I might have been slow, but I might have been fast to others, is the ability to listen to people around you. Like, if you cannot do that, if you can't trust in the people you're working with or have working for you or whatever it is, you will not progress, because you're going to own it all tight because you're afraid to give it up to a partner or anybody else. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is the way it's got to be. If you can't adapt, you're done. Don't even start. If you can't learn to grow in yourself, that coming out of high school, I can't. I'm going to eat green beans, and because I like green beans, I'm never eating anything else. Then you're not going to make it as a business owner. Never.
Yeah. I think that really goes to having a growth mindset.
Yeah.
That was huge for me, and learning, and I continue to. It's like a drug for me to just continue to get as much knowledge as I can. It's like a superpower, but you have to be open and understand that you don't know everything and you're going to be wrong. And part of it is failing and getting back up and learning from that and doing it again and doing it again. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced that in your journey. How many times have you
constantly
failed?
Yeah.
But you keep going, right?
But you know what? My partner, his name's Mark, and I always talk to Mark, and Mark says, okay, well, we're going to fail, but we're going to fail fast, baby. Like, we're going to do it. We're going to fall on our face and run right back up. Like, and that's truth. But, when you look at all those things that you do and all those relationships, you get goodness from everybody you work with. If you look hard enough, you find qualities about yourself and things that you can do, and you can grow and adapt and learn new things that you never expected by the people that work for you. Now, I mean, I expected it out of you, but you were very analytical. You knew you were very systems driven, and I mean, honestly, you were the father of, and if I would be the mother, I guess, but you were the father of the guy who started our process and really kind of opened my eyes. 10 years? Oh, God, longer than that, like a long time ago. 12 years, who knows how long it's been. But I couldn't just keep grinding away the way I was. I needed to really objectively look at the business. And I will tell you right now, if you saw that process where we're at today, you'd be amazed. Like it's insane.
My baby's grown up.
Your baby's grown up, man. She's dating, you know. But no, it's one of those things where there's a lot of good, and I got great people that I work with now too. And man, I've got this guy Ethan and Kaylee. I mean, I got to mention everybody's name now because I think I don't include them all, right? Every
Roll
single
credits.
person I work with, you know, brings great insight. But I had to be of the mindset to that advice to that young entrepreneur. Okay, you have to listen. Be a listener. The loudest mouth in the room is not the wisest. You know, it's the one absorbing all the information. I mean, the loudmouth may get attention, and if you apply that to multiple things in your life, but when you can listen and speak from a position of knowledge, you're going to be more valuable. And I think that I'm more knowledgeable by the people I'm with, and only because of them.
Let's do a couple last questions here just for fun.
Yeah.
If you could have a conversation or have a meeting, grab a coffee with
Yeah.
anyone living or dead,
Okay.
who would it be and why?
Yeah, Howard Hughes, definitely.
Why is that?
Because, you know, he had whatever quirks in his personality, he had a vision, right? And however he got to that vision, he never allowed the fear to overwhelm him. I'm sure it was, you know, it gave him wake-up calls here and there, but, you know, he had a vision. I'm going to make movies. I'm going to make I'm going to build airplanes. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to take something I have and I want to do something with it. And it does take courage. It really does take courage to, I'm not saying that's great for me. You're a hero. You know, you have courage. People they work with that are, you know, anywhere around us, they're all, you know, have courage. But he took it to the next level, right? And you look at people like Elon Musk. That's a tough tie. Hughes and Elon. I mean, they're both amazing people, and regardless of your preferences, I mean, there's a mindset and a way they think that I would want to know more about, definitely.
Yeah, I think one of the key takeaways from that is you can have a vision, right? You can have a dream, but a dream without action is nothing, right? He took action. The people who achieve, they take action. As much as we were talking before, like this started recording, like I had no thoughts or dreams of ever being on a podcast. I'm very self-conscious about the way that I sound. Growing up, I always had sinus issues.
Right.
Nobody wants to listen to me.
Sure.
But here we are, and I'm like, I'm just going to do it. So here we are, the first episode, and it's happening.
Yeah, well,
on a micro level.
You did it. You took action, though, man. And that's the other thing. That's your own advice. You give that. That's the truth. And if you don't take action, it's never happening. You can talk a great game. You can go to the party. You can try to impress your in-laws, but if you are not doing things, you're not doing anything, period. And celebrate your small wins. So, that's important.
That's a good tip, too.
Yeah, celebrate the wins.
Awesome. So last question. You already mentioned the E-Myth. Mm-hmm. Is there any other books or podcasts or anything that you listened to recently or that resonate with you as something you would recommend?
I actually did read Elon's book about his history, but one of the ones for me is the biography of Walt Disney, his story. Like that was a big book.
That was a long,
massive.
It took me like weeks.
Yeah, it did. It took a long time, but I honestly thought. A lot of that stuff resonated with me. Another great, innovator who saw something and says, "I'm going to go after it." Right? Mm-hmm. Not recklessly, well, a little recklessly, but he said, "This is what I'm going to go do." And to hear the challenges and how, if you look at my business, it's almost like okay, we design websites, we do solutions, and marketing, blah blah blah. We do all these things. How we've evolved, and I'm like looking. When I read that book and I started looking around at all the rooms, I'm like, wow, everybody's kind of going through this. And this is not like I'm not unique. There's solutions, people who've already gone this path, so why not pay attention to it a little bit more? And that book about Walt Disney was a huge help to me. Yeah, and just kind of even showed me what opportunities there were, beyond what I think is tomorrow. Like there's other stuff there I haven't even discovered. In the past month, I found opportunities I never even would have imagined we would have been part of. And it's kind of like, wow, there they are. Look at that.
That's awesome.
I can be part of it.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's the end of my questions. So
yeah. Well, but
I know you brought something.
Yeah, I brought something. So
I'll give you an opportunity.
Yeah, let me. So I brought you a gift, and a couple gifts, really. So.
Oh wow.
Okay, so first off, I'm going to give you the first thing as a joke.
Okay.
The best pad tablets were ever made for taking notes. These are the best things ever. So
Are you still using these?
We are still using. We had a whole bunch reprinted. So I got a ton of these things.
With the grid paper and everything.
The grid thing. I only take one of these pens out, but we also have the Mojo pens. So you got it, and I got more in here for you.
Thank you.
And then this is a cool one, but it's not the one I'm most excited about. This is a Hydrate Spark Pro bottle. So
It's got an app.
yeah, it's an app. So this bottle will light up reminding me when I need to take drinks, and it measures down to the ounce in real time how much water I'm drinking.
Wow.
And so it tells you how far. So if I want to drink 120 ounces of water a day, this is reminding me, did you drink your water? And it tracks it, and you can challenge your friends. Like you and I can be in a water
Really?
race.
That's awesome.
So these are really
I
cool.
was literally just thinking, like, yesterday I like got a cramp, and I'm like, I'm not drinking enough water.
Yeah. Well, I knew you'd love
Perfect
this.
timing.
Yeah, I know
Thank
you'd
you.
love this because I'm like, he loves the challenge, man. Like, you know,
yeah.
did you hit your
I'm
120
on
ounces
a big
today?
health kick right now too.
There
I'm
you
trying
go.
to lose some weight. I turn 40 next year, so I'm like,
Oh, yeah, I turned 50
fit by
next year.
40.
Oh, God. And I brought one other thing for the non-healthy part.
Okay.
So I had these made. I saw this on a TikTok, and I was like, okay, I got to do that. So check this out. Oh, sorry about the mic.
Oreos.
Mojo Oreos.
Awesome.
So there you go. You got two of those. Well, you can take the whole
Sweet.
bag. But
I'll put them all in there afterwards. Thank you so much.
yeah, you're very welcome.
And thank you for being my first guest on the podcast here. Made it a lot easier.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having
Good
me.
history. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Great history.
All right.
And yeah, I hope wish you much success. You're doing great
Likewise.
things.
Likewise.
Great.
Thanks, Alex.
All right.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Real Pasadena Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Real Pasadena is your local online source where we cover the real news and highlight the real people impacting our community. Be sure to check us out at realpasadenamd.com, where you'll also find all the show notes and additional episodes of the podcast. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, be well, my friends.